Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the KMA Thursday night Meet and Tea session where we get together virtually to discuss topics of interest to the community. Today's topic is about how to safely enjoy winter activities on the ice. We still have many more weeks of winter left, so let's see how we can make the most of it and enjoy the great outdoors and possibly try something we haven't tried before. As usual, there's going to be an interactive session, so feel free to ask any questions that you may have relevant to the topic at hand. You can ask questions through the Zoom facility, or you can type it in through the YouTube. We have moderators collecting questions. They're going to submit it to me, and I can ask it on your behalf. Or if you're inside the Zoom session, you could just unmute yourself and ask a question and stop the panelists at any point. And I think that should be fine. My name is Latif Ahmed, and I'll be a moderator for tonight's session. With me are Dan Dubo and Sharif Awad, who are winter enthusiasts and outdoorsmen and experienced ice fishermen. Yes, folks, you heard that right. Ice fishermen. These guys love to be on the ice with a fishing rod in the middle of winter. And they're going to share with us how we too can enjoy this sport and have a great time doing so. Let's begin with you, Dan. You have a really cool job as a project officer at the Canada Revenue Agency, involved with special projects that are not related to investigating tax cheats and fraudsters. Instead, my understanding is you are dealing with employee engagement and community engagement and things like that. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your background and what you do and why you enjoy winter activities?
Sure, thanks Latif. And I guess thanks Omar for inviting me to be part of this. I am on a special project right now that's aside from my normal job of employee engagement. So I'm working with the CRA, but I'm also doing essentially raising money for United Way through it's called the CRA charitable campaign. So with doing that, I was able to do a bunch of fun and engaging things that brought people out to play soccer with newcomers, for example, the women from CRA to play with women newcomers. So about being creative at work and trying new things. So this is relatively new though for me. My background mostly is I come from 14 years of working with new immigrants and refugees, but mainly it was with the Catholic Center for Immigrants. And I did that for many years. And my main job there was engagement with the community. So integration of newcomers. And the main tool I used all the time was sport. And eventually I grew into a whole social enterprise of mine called Drop-In Sports. And with that social enterprise, we essentially work with all the settlement agencies to help them integrate their newcomers into the community using sport and trying new sports. So cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and ice fishing. Name it and we've probably done it.
Okay. So I believe you're also already involved in a lot of activities helping new immigrants integrate into the community. And one of these type of activities is, of course, ice fishing that you do. So can you tell us a little bit about that and about your background dealing with immigrants and helping refugees and settlement activities?
Yeah, well, I guess it all started when we were running a program where we're trying to make friends for newcomers. Newcomers were arriving in Canada and not having the connections. First of all, they think, I got to get a job. I have to, and it's extremely important. Yes, you got to get a job. That's the best way to get integrated into a community, right? Find some meaningful work. However, what's often a big challenge or what newcomers don't act on right away is making connections or thinking about their health and exploring what's around them. And you don't know the power of sport when you're involved on your mental health, but also in making the connections. If you meet somebody on a sports team, for example, you're likely going to make professional connections. So we started a program years ago. Bill, it went into the Community Cup soccer event. I'm not sure if people on the line now or who are watching the video later will know the Community Cup, but it was something that we did for over 12 years, and it integrated thousands of newcomers through using a recreational soccer tournament as the lure, and many non-newcomers got to meet newcomers, which is exciting. Is all about this integration and celebration of diversity. So that was something that really inspired me to continue to do what I do now, and what my annual Harbor Harvest ice fishing tournament has been doing, where we bring newcomers onto the ice, some of them for the first time in their lives walking on hard water, and trying to catch some fish that are underneath it. So teaching them the basics, the how-tos, and running a tournament. So usually it's a tournament. This year, because of COVID, we just decided to make it a virtual event where we're still running a contest, so people can still get out there and submit their pictures. But it is hard for people who don't have the equipment. The great thing about the event in the past was that I always provided all the equipment. We had volunteers who would drill holes. We had 500 or 600 holes drilled in the ice, so 500 or 600 people could be ice fishing. So that was, and it was usually tied to a charitable cause. So we're raising money for OCSO, which is another settlement agency in the city, or Children at Risk, or Ottawa Riverkeeper. So it was about giving back to the community as well, so raising money. We had volunteers come out and participate. So even when you're fishing, you're meeting people too. So it's not just get out. It is great to get out and try new things and not be afraid of it, but it also is great to see the people connecting, interacting while they're doing it. And then you have something in common. You're building those common affinities with people, I think, was a key piece for integration and feeling welcome somewhere, or for non-newcomers like myself to know more about newcomers.
No, great. That sounds like a very, very beneficial, project and engagement that you did for so many years, right? Like close to 10 years. And I know that when I first came to this country, I know how it feels like when you don't know anybody. And sports and doing activities together is a great way to bond and form friendships and get to know the wider community. And so, kudos to you for helping organize that. Before we get into ice fishing and all these things, I do want to get your advice on how we can enjoy winter activities safely. Before we go trying to do anything, on the ice or any other sports that we may have never have done before, what would be your tips to everyone on how we can go about and safely enjoy the outdoors in winter?
Well, I mean, I first of all, I don't claim to be an expert in this area, and it is a sensitive topic because I think a lot of people are afraid to give full out advice, but because there are areas you can go and areas you couldn't, and might be different than this year than that year. For this year, for example, in Ottawa, we had a really big freeze before we got lots of snow. And so we got lots of hard, thick ice out there, and it actually is expanded a lot further. I've gone out further than I ever have, but it's because the ice is super thick and strong. It's a strong ice because it's blue. It's blue or black. It's a dark, thick ice rather than a clear gray kind of ice that or cloudy looking ice. Where it's not as trustworthy. So the other thing is about knowing where to go. You can't, one thing I've seen out there when I've been out so far, probably about say 10, 12 times this year out ice fishing. Mm-hmm. And I've seen on the Ottawa River, right behind me is the map of the Ottawa River. And down over here is the Nepean Sailing Club. And
Okay.
that's where I like to fish. And this is where the tournament usually is. And it's, this is Carling Avenue right here. And yeah, so out over here, usually you can't walk out too far. In the winter, the ice is too sketchy because first of all, this is a river. It's moving water. So usually you don't trust moving water in the winter to walk on, right? Water is extremely dangerous when it's cold. You could go into shock and you don't know what it's going to do to your body. You will be paralyzed. Um, uh, However, there are some websites that give tips on what to do if you fall in. There are some videos out there on what to do. Don't give up. If you want to fall in, don't just give up. But it is the concept of just not going way out too far and exploring. I got to go exploring these areas because I've seen a lot of people already this year go way out too far onto the ice because they just assume it's safe. Or if they saw somebody out there and they assume, oh, they must know what they're doing, so therefore it must be good. But you don't know if that person is just an expert and they know exactly where to go, or maybe they just don't know either. They got lucky. Because this year I've just seen some people go way too far and or let their kids or dogs run way ahead of them, and that's not smart either. I've seen families go out for walks on kids running around. You have to be very careful to create boundaries and have a plan if something does happen. So if somebody does fall in, you need to have a plan. But I would beg that anybody not to go exploring not to be too adventurous. At the same time, know where the water inlets and outlets are. Like this map doesn't really show too well, but in the Ottawa River, there are some inlets that will come in, and then it will create some where the ice isn't thick, and you can't go there. Although you would think, oh, it must be close to shore, therefore it's safe, right? But that's not the case. When the inlets is still creating moving water, so you have to stay away from the edge, those edges as well. So sticking to where is thick, and a good plan could be to talk to those ice fisher people that are out there already. I have a lot of people always asking me, how thick is the ice? If I'm drilling a hole, how thick is the ice? And if I'm saying 10, 12 inches, that's good. But if the ice is 5 inches or less, don't go too much farther. That's probably a good limit is the 5 inches. And I prefer more than that.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you can't always just rely on the depth. It's also the quality of the ice, right? Because an ice can have air bubbles.
Yeah.
There's clear ice, and then there is hazy, cloudy ice. So can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, and again, it depends on the year or what the temperature was last week. You think, oh, it's super cold today, therefore it must be good. But no, if it's been like 1 week of warm weather, there could be stuff shifting in there. And it's a little bit safer. I don't want to say like fully much more safer, but the lakes, lakes that don't have too much moving water are generally safer. But the Ottawa River, because it's right near, I'm assuming a lot of the people here, Canada group it's a big body of water right next to us. It is very popular to go. I've seen a lot because of COVID. Also, the people looking for something to do, so they're going onto the water for the first time. It's yes, you gotta be wary of the ice conditions, and if we get a huge snowfall, that's adding a lot of weight onto the ice as well. So be careful of that, because then there could be shifts in the ice, or that weight just pushing down just too much, and then creating I don't know what it's called, like a rupture, kind of when the earth shifts like that.
Oh, the plates.
Plates, yeah,
tectonic movements.
Shift, yes.
Tectonic shift. Yes. When I first, until recently, to be honest, I've been here for a few decades in Canada, and until recently, I had no idea about the dangers of being on the ice. There's these things like you telling us about these currents when you're on the river, a lot more dangerous as opposed to being on a pond, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is as well, like I said, you need to know what the weather was previously. Just because it was good previous week doesn't mean it's going to be great this week as well, right? So if that it can be dangerous, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the dangers of what could happen? What are some of the worst case scenarios could happen when you're not careful?
Wow, yeah, if you're not careful, yeah, this is where if you fall in, break the ice. Well, first of all, we've seen people slip on the ice, which is also another danger too. So if you're going out, you're not comfortable on the ice, it's okay to wear a helmet on the ice too. You could think about slips and falls. That's another thing. It's a little bit harder to slip when you got like in Sharif's photo in his background there. It's very snowy, but under that there be slippery ice as well. You could also step in the water, step in a hole that an ice fisher and has left in the past, which has happened as well to get soakers. So wearing the right equipment, like nice waterproof boots, if you're going to go out, that's important. But yes, I think what you're getting at, what you're asking me really is about if there's an accident and you fall in. Again, this is not where I want to be claiming to be an expert, but I do know that you want to keep your body out flat and not create this sort of pressure downwards on the ice. You want to sort of reach out. If you're alone, this is what you're doing. You're reaching out. You're trying to crawl and stay low and calm on the ice. But then you also want to be kicking your feet to get out of the ice, and ideally towards land. You don't want to go out deeper into, because in theory it gets as you're going more into the water, the ice will be thinner. But you also yeah, you want to just get to find yourself a nice ledge to pull yourself up, and it's going to be hard. You're probably going to be freaking out, and you're going to go into shock. Your breath is probably going to be, you probably won't be able to breathe. One thing you do to prevent that is to wear the right clothing, first of all. And a lot of ice fishermen have like Gore-Tex suits or float suits on when they're out there. They're wearing super thick clothes that's going to float. So that's another thing. When I see people out wearing their running shoes and their jeans and all going exploring, I'm walking with my date down the water because this is fun and cute. But if you fall in, that's it could be super dangerous. And I don't want, it's still fun. I don't want to scare anybody from getting out there and doing this because, but you just have to know the limitations and stick to where, it's safe.
Like any sport, right? It has its dangers. And if you are aware of it and careful, then you can safely enjoy it. By the way, I've lost my video, but I can still hear you. And so we'll just continue. The important thing is you guys are the ones that need to see. So actually, when you're talking about that falling in the ice, I mean, this really hit close to home recently when I was with my friend the other day, and he told me how his colleague went ice fishing with a mutual friend, and they fell in the ice. Okay, and this was actually news. The Ottawa Citizen covered it and whatnot. So there were two guys, Adam and Dennis, and they went ice fishing on the Mississippi Mills River. And this was sometime about 3-4 weeks ago. And they fell in the ice. One guy got out, Adam. He was the younger one, and he managed to crawl out of the ice. The other one did not. He wasn't so fortunate. And he was in the ice for about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, so this is Dennis. And it was a really close call. I mean, they call the ambulance and they call the police, and in the end, the fire brigade came. They had drones. You know what? There's a nice video as well you can check out if you just Google it. And it was a very, very close situation, but they got out, and these are experienced ice fishermen. And apparently, what happened is that they were done for the day, and they were coming back, and they just weren't as careful as they were when they went out on the ice, and they let their guard down, and they had this accident. So I can understand, what you were talking about is it can be scary, but you have to go prepared, right? Have the right equipment, and we're going to get into that. What's the right equipment? What are some of the safety protocols with ice fishing and whatnot? But before we get there, I want to switch this a little bit to Sharif here, who's been has a very nice picture, a very interesting picture behind him that we see of a tent on the ice. So Sharif, first of all, can you tell us how you got into ice fishing? Because frankly, I don't know anyone in our community or in anyone in my friend circle who does this sport, right? So can you tell us how you got into it, why you like ice fishing, and what is that picture behind you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Latif. So I've been interested in fishing since I was very young. It's been a passion of mine. The only problem, Canada is a cold country, so like open water fishing, you can only do it so many months a year. And I would get restless during the winter, waiting for the open water to come again. So I started exploring online, YouTube specifically, and learning about ice fishing. And then one year, myself, brother-in-law, we decided to take the plunge. So we went to Cabela's, and they're very helpful there. They told us, what's the minimum gear we need to buy. So we kind of bought, the auger for making the hole. We bought, some rods, some baits. We tried it. Of course, the first few times you just get very cold and miserable. You don't catch any fish, but we kept at it, and eventually I got to like it. Really, we started catching fish, enjoying it. So that I started investing more. So I bought the tent. I bought some safety equipment as well, which I think is very important. So I bought a flotation suit in case I fall in. I have ice picks, so if I fall in, I can use them to hopefully get back out. I also bought something called the spud bar, which I think is really important, because the problem with the ice, as Dan mentioned, is that it changes, right? So, as you're walking out, you may not be aware of the currents or the ebbs and flows, right? And it's very easy to, accidentally step in an area where the ice may not be thick enough. So the nice thing of spud is just a very long bar. They're not that expensive, about $40. And all you do is you just tap it in front of you. So as I'm walking, if I don't feel safe, I'll keep tapping it. And every tap will be like an inch of ice. So if I tap it 4 times, it doesn't go through the ice. That means I have at least 4 inches of ice. And then I can step forward. So obviously you would walk a lot slower, and it does take you a lot of time to get where you're going, but it's kind of the safest way to guarantee that you don't accidentally slip. And what happened to the people in Mississippi River when they're coming back is because they weren't spudding, right? They kind of just assumed that the path they were taking, the ice was the same thickness, but they got unlucky and there was a patch where it wasn't thick enough to support them. And that's why they fell through. So the way to avoid that is kind of just to keep spudding out. Like never assume the ice is safe, and always test the ice, either spudding or making a lot of holes to test the thickness. So, that's what I would recommend. And I've had a few close calls. Like I've been on the river and I've been walking, and I actually, hit my spud bar and it went all the. I mean, had I taken one more step, I could have potentially fallen in. So that's, I guess, the importance of just being extra careful. And another thing I'd add to what Dan said is just always go with someone else. Like ice fishing is not I know with COVID it may be a bit tougher, but if you can have like a partner, even if you social distance, or let your family know where you are, because the most dangerous thing is you fall in and there's no one there to help you, right? No one there to call the police or the ambulance or get you help, right? That's another problem. But yeah, so this picture is actually taken on Clayton Lake, which is about half an hour from Ottawa. It's a beautiful lake for ice fishing. And yeah, I mean, it looks really cold, but once you set up the tent, you set up your heater, you have a hot tea or something, it's actually very comfortable inside the tent. And you can fish for hours without getting cold. So there's all of this equipment to make it, comfortable for ice fishing, if you want to invest in that. But if you just even want to get the minimum and just go and try it for an hour or something, there's that option as well. Like you don't have to overcomplicate it. But definitely safety first. And my advice, anyone new, is just try to find someone experienced. At least the first few times, go with someone experienced, someone like Dan, for example. Let him, show you the what to do and so on, before you try to go by yourself with your family. Just to be extra cautious.
Okay, thank you, Sharif. I see we have Omar who's raised his hand. Go ahead, Omar. You can ask your question if you have.
Yeah, I just either Sharif or Dan. It's not directed at anyone in particular, just the two experts. But like if I was new, like I would obviously have all these fears, right? And if someone like yourself, Sharif, you were really motivated to do this, and so you really spent a lot of time in research. But for me, like I'd love to do it, but I think just that fear of going, well, I don't want to fall in, I don't know where to go. So I was just wondering, like, obviously, yeah, I would love to go. In fact, the reality is I when I do go ice fishing, it is with Dan. But what I was going to say is, like, if I was new, is there a website like that shows different like ice fishing spots that you could refer us to? And also, like the other thing that is, ice thickness. Like, well, how do I know? Like, how do I know today's safe? And maybe today's safe, but I want to go fishing again tomorrow. Is tomorrow safe? So is there some place that might list that information?
Well, I don't know if Sharif has an idea or not, but there isn't, as far as I know, there isn't anyone out there that's willing to put it out there. Oh, here is safe, go for it. Or no one's tracking it because it could change, right? The best thing is to so there's, for example, Petrie Island near Ottawa has a place where you can go and you can rent a shack, or you could just go, and I think they even have just gear you could rent as well, $5 or whatever, and they'll drill a hole for you for $5. Or it used to be like that, anyways. I don't know if it's changed. But Petrie Island, for example, they have a setup there for people to go out. And Shirley's Bay is an area that is very popular, and there's shacks all year round up there. And Constance Bay is the same idea. So generally it's the bays you want to stick to if you're out in the Ottawa River, right? And then there's other website. There is a website. I think it's called Fish. Actually, I just went to it right now, but it looks like it's not the right one. But I think it's called fishonline.ca or .com. But there is some websites that will tell you good places to fish, but it's not specific to ice fishing. It's just good places to fish. I don't know, Sharif, do you know of anywhere? Oh, and I guess I should mention, if you're on Facebook, there are ice fishing groups. Like there's groups. I'm part of 3 or 4 of them. Usually it's hard to get people to tell you where their secret spots are. That's sort of the one faux pas you don't ask in the group. Where's your secret spot? And that people get mad at you for asking. But but generally, yeah, sticking to the bays and looking at what people are saying on these Facebook groups has been helpful for me, anyways. And where other tournaments has happened, if you know a tournament has happened in this spot, then generally that's a good spot. Sharif, you have...
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's community spots, as Dan mentioned, and I'd recommend you obviously start with them because there's a community of people who fish there regularly. So, if you see shacks on the ice, people driving on the ice, it doesn't mean it's going to be 100% safe, but it's a lot safer than going to a place by yourself, that where there's not a community of people fishing. So at least if you go there, if you see that there's shacks, there's people driving, then if you're walking out, then you should be okay as long as you stay close to the other people. Like I wouldn't venture out, around the community. In terms of where we are in Canada, because I know this is mostly the Canada Muslim Association, the places I would recommend for someone starting would be Shirley's Bay, which Dan mentioned. And you can reach out to me. I can give you all the details about that. I fish there quite often. And there's another lake that's very close to the Musalla, the place that we pray. It's about 8 minutes. It's called Constance Lake. And it's nice because it's actually the first lake to freeze in the winter, and it's the last lake to thaw. So if you go there in January, February, generally it will have the safest ice in the Ottawa region. They have about 20 inches there right now. Again, they're not spots where you're going to catch like huge fish or huge numbers, but just in terms of the community, in terms of safety, those spots I would recommend that you start with. And yeah, no one publishes ice thickness just because it's a liability. Like if the city were to publish it or someone were to publish it and something bad were to happen, then they could be legally liable for that. So it's always like they always tell you no ice is safe ice, and you have to check it yourself, basically.
Thank you, Sharif and Dan.
Yeah, that's great. How much is an auger then?
If you get it on sale, about $30. Usually Cabela's has like Black Friday sale and the Boxing Day and stuff. But I mean, generally you can get it 50 to 100, regular price.
Yeah, Kijiji or those areas online too. There's people selling stuff. But if you wanted a gas or propane auger, because you want to do a lot of, because Sharif's talking about the sort of manual, which is more the real deal. If you want to go out, that's the way you should be doing it, so you get your workout in at the same time. Because actually, one thing we didn't talk about in this call is that and one reason why a lot of people hate ice fishing is because they find it so cold. But yeah, if it's things, winter sports will be cold if you're not moving. If you're moving and you're active and you're doing that drill and you get a little sweat going, your heart is pumping, you're going to enjoy winter a whole lot more. And then once you get the shack, like Sharif has in the back, and I don't know if you have a little buddy heater or in there too, because then when you get in the shack, typically that's a wind shelter. And then you can have a little heater in there, and it's wonderful to sit in those shacks and have a little heater going. Maybe have some snacks. Well, definitely have some snacks, especially if you have kids. You have to have snacks, and a couple holes in there, and you can fish while you're in there, or maybe have a couple holes just outside the tent too to keep an eye on. Yeah, but your question really was about the auger. So if you wanted a gas one, you're looking at like $200, $300, $400 for that.
Actually, I would recommend probably if you can't do the manual hole, then just get a drill, like a 1/2 inch drill, and buy like a cheap auger from Cabela's, like $30-$40, and you just get an attachment from Amazon. It's about $10, and you can hook up the battery powered drill, and you may already have a drill, right, to the auger, and it's worked quite well for me. So there's a picture actually here that Latif is showing. The nice thing about that setup, it's more environmentally friendly. It doesn't create burn fossil fuels or anything, and you can use it inside and outside. Like, you have to be careful inside the shelter. If you're drilling holes with a gas auger, you're creating carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide and stuff. So this is very clean, eco-friendly, and very easy to use as well. You just have to get a powerful drill though, like the something with at least 700 pounds of torque in it to drive the auger.
One thing I'll add to that is the blades on those augers. If they're not sharp, it's going to be a tough go, especially certain kinds of ice. Like the ice that's right now, it's been a hard, thick ice. So I had a hand auger blades were pretty dull, and it was a nightmare to try to drill. But once those blades are sharp, you can cut through it. I'm a little bit more of the lazy person where I actually have a propane auger and because I drilled a bunch of holes when
I mean, with the propane auger, you could drill hundreds of holes if you wanted. It's just it's a beast of a machine, right?
Okay, great. Actually, this is a good segue into the discussion on equipment. So we talked about auger. Can you tell us what are the other equipment one needs in order to safely, go out there, like the minimum equipment for beginners? So Sharif told us a few things. So Dan, maybe I could ask you is what kind of gear does a beginner need to go ice fishing and do it safely?
Okay, well, the auger is important. If you can't get a hole, and that's actually the biggest limitation for a lot of people is the auger. So if you can figure out to get a hole, that's step one. Okay, step two, you could fish with a stick and a piece of line like this. Okay, this has a line and a hook. Best I find is some worms or minnows for bait, but it depends. In some areas, you have to know the regulations. So there is the Ontario Ministry puts out regulations about if you're allowed live bait in this body of water, or what you're allowed to catch, how many you're allowed to catch. What's in season and what's not in season. So that's another subject that maybe it goes too deep into it right now. We just want to get people out fishing. But yeah, you should be aware of the regulations. Otherwise, you could fish with this kind of setup here. This is actually a rod. Can you see that? Yeah, well, there's a rod. It's a mini rod. And on the end, there is a little flashing sort of lure that would be down under there with the hook on it that you would make it dance in the water, and ideally, eventually you get a tug on the line. But this setup here with the tip up is a very common setup, and when I run my tournaments, I provide everybody with one of these. So it's a kind of setup like this, and it's a tip up. Actually, maybe I'll take off my screen share so you can see this.
Yeah, you're disappearing a little bit as you.
Yeah, I'm gonna take off my my screen share once I. Oh, it's.
Oh, you can continue. Most of it is still visible. Most of it is visible.
All right, there we go. So it is a setup that looks like this. Essentially, it gets planted in the snow by the hole like this. It's a very simple setup. Planted in the hole. And this is mainly, though, you'd have a more of a baited hook, because unless you're going to be sitting there making a dance, it's going to, the fish aren't going to be attracted. So if this little hook has some bait on it, what's going to happen is when this is in the water, you would unravel the line, to let it go as deep as you want. Typically, you let the line go down. You try to find the bottom. So say where I go fishing is usually about 10, 12 feet deep of water. So I let it go down about 10 feet into the water, and I make it dance around that level. I might let it go touch the bottom, bring it up, and move it around in that area. Sometimes I bring it right up near the surface and back down, make the fish think that this lure or the bait is trying to run away on them, and they try to come up and catch it, right? And then what happens is if this is just sitting out there, and I don't need, if I'm not there right beside it, but if a fish bites, it pulls down, and then it stops here. And so when I see this other end up, then I know there's a fish on, and I run as quick as I can to catch this tip up. This is called a tip up. And it's very simple. You can make one of these very easily. I have 350 of these because I have a fishing tournament that I put on and give these out. But these rods here, like I'm sure Sharif has these kinds, and this is more fun actually, because you get to fight with the fish. That's what I find most exciting about ice fishing, is when, or fishing in general, when a fish bites, it's that pull and the zipping sound that your reel will make. And then, you let the fish play, pull. You don't want to pull too hard. You want to break that line. It's a fight. It's a if you got a big fish on there, and the longer it takes to get them up, the more exciting for me.
Great.
So and this is where you could really feel it. Like you could really feel the fight with this sort of setup. And so it is. You can get that for like 30, sometimes $20 at Canadian Tire. But I would recommend. It comes with some sets come with some basic line on it. Get rid of that line, because usually it's garbage line that, because I made that mistake where I fished with it and I got a nice big fish and the line snapped because it was just cheap line. So a nice 10-pound line on there, depending what you're going for. Some people you want to just catch those little guys, and that's fine, but I want to catch the little bit bigger. So I put a little bit more heavy duty line. So I just mentioned that little tip because I don't want you going out there and catching a big fish and then snapping your line, because that's sad.
Got enough. Thank you very much.
And I don't know if she's going to get this. If you're going to go out, need to bring a pair of pliers with you. Pair of pliers, because you don't want to leave that poor fish with a hook in its mouth. And trying to get it out with your hands, first of all. That's a nice fish there. There's Sharif. Nice pike. And he's got a fish grabber on his. So that's mainly to hold the fish, but there is a tool that you would use to get the hook out of the mouth. Certain fish like this pike have sharp teeth, and you don't want to put your fingers in the mouth of this kind of fish. So if you're going to go out, don't just bring out the simple setup with catching fish. You make sure, have a plan for when you do catch a fish. What are you going to do with it? You're going to get the pliers out. You're going to take that hook out. If you decide you want to keep the fish, you could just throw it on the ice and keep it and keep on fishing. I typically bring a bucket with me. But generally I don't, where I'm going, usually it's usually catching a reef. So I don't really have a plan for bringing it home.
Okay, great. No, that is a big fish. I mean, I don't know how long it took Sharif to catch that fish, but that is a big fish. And you said it was a pike, right?
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, it's about an 8 pound pike. Yeah, it was a long time because I was using like a 4 pound line, very, very light line. So I had my drag set loose. So I just like, as Dan mentioned, you have to let the fish run and you have to play with it a lot.
Okay.
And then like when you get it to the hole, you have to stick your hand into the hole because if you try to pull it out with the rod, it's just going to snap the line, right? So you got to go and you have to grab it, not in the mouth, obviously, like in underneath the gills, and then you just pull it out of the hole. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. No, that is a big catch for sure. We have a question here from Dr. Ashfaq who said that when you fish in the shack and are going to be in there for a few hours, are you able to cook in the shack too without sliding into the water?
Yeah, absolutely. So the buddy heater I have, it actually you can just put a grill on top of it, and you can make like hot dogs or any type of wings or anything you want there basically. A lot of people just make snacks in the shack. The only thing for safety I would recommend is that you make sure that there's proper ventilation. So like there's vents in the tent, you make sure those are open or you open at least one window because carbon monoxide poisoning is a real risk and there are people who die from that. It's like keeping your car running in the garage, for example. So as long as you have the right ventilation, it's not an issue. As far as burning through the ice, if there's a chance you could burn through the ice, then you should not be fishing on that ice. Your means the ice is way too thin. Like typically in a day of having my heater on, I might go through 1 inch of ice, right? So as long as you have 10 more inches, then that's not an issue. But of course, if you're fishing on 3 inches of ice, which you should not be, then of course the heater could cause you problems.
Now, there is another very good tip that I came across is do not start a bonfire on the ice. That's not a good idea, right?
Well, people do it.
What?
It's.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. Now, what people do is they'll bring sometimes a metal pot or they'll bring stones and they'll actually put the fire on top of that. It's not actually as dangerous as you think because heat rises, right? So it's not
Okay.
actually gonna like it's not like in the cartoons where like there's gonna be a big hole in the ice, right? But I mean, you have to use common sense. Obviously, if the fire gets too big and stuff, yeah, it could be problematic, right?
Okay, got it. We have a follow-up question from Dr. Ishfaq. I know people who drive 7 to 8 hours north to go away for a week ice fishing. What's the benefit of going so far? Is it to do with fresh water or cleaner fish?
No, just better fishing, right? So the area around Ottawa, a lot of people fish there. So over time, obviously the fish population depletes, and the fish get smarter, right? Because they've seen a lot of lures and baits. So I mean, it's very common in Ottawa to go fishing and not catch any fish, right? You go for the experience, really, right? Even if you're a good fisherman. Um, the further north you go, it's relatively underfished. The fish population is a lot more healthy. And obviously the waters are cleaner as well, no doubt. I mean, you can eat fish in Ottawa. There, the ministry does publish guidelines on maximum recommended limits, and of course they differ for pregnant women, breastfeeding and so on. But you should definitely check those guidelines. And you can eat the fish. Obviously, up north you could eat more fish potentially, right? Because they would be cleaner.
Good. Thank you, Sharif. I also have one comment from or question from India. She's saying it probably depends on the size of the shack and the amount of holes. I think she's referring to, I guess, the size of the fishing rod that you can have. Please correct me if I'm wrong, India. But sounds like you have gone ice fishing on more than one occasion. But good question.
I think India was responding to the question from right before that. She was probably about the cooking question.
Oh, I see.
But India has been in my I have a double shack. I have one like Sharif, but I also have a double one, which I don't use very often. It's only when the whole family comes out and it's more of a party, right? Because the kids do like the shack. It is a place to go eat your snacks, and usually the heater's there. That the shack that Sharif has is good for 2 people to be fishing in and have a heater. Anything more than that, it gets a little bit tighter. So yeah, it does depend on. but it's much heavier to carry and a nuisance. I maybe use it once a year.
Got it. I'm assuming you would use something like that when you're going to be out there for an extended period of time, right? And
Yes.
so,
Yes. Yeah.
what are we talking? Like, how long does it take to catch a fish? Like, I've not really ever caught a fish, right? Are we talking 3-4 hours? Are we talking 7-8 hours?
But
Like,
it's called fishing, not catching. Right? So yeah, it depends where you go. For sure, I've gone out in the last 3 times I've gone out. I don't think I got anything. So you can go out for hours and not catch anything. It totally depends, and so be ready for that, and be ready just for the experience.
so okay, let's talk about then. What is this? What's the lure of ice fishing? No pun intended here. Like sitting around this, little hole in frigid temperatures, and you may or may not catch a fish. So, can you tell us what's so great about ice fishing?
Go ahead, Sharif.
Yeah, I mean, I love fishing. So any type of fishing, I'm kind of addicted to it. So for me, I guess it's just the adventure of it, right? I mean, it's like you're going and you're seeing the beautiful nature. It's kind of a game of cat and mouse with the fish. Like I just thought of it, like if God had made fishing so easy, it probably wouldn't be as addictive or as nice, right? Because imagine every time you went, you caught a fish, right? You would get bored of it after a while, right? You would say, another fish, right?
Yeah,
but because it's hard, because there's a challenge and there's like something you have to work hard for, when you actually do finally get a fish, you feel a sense of accomplishment. It's kind of a rush that you get because of all the effort and time. And for me, that's like it's just, I wouldn't say it's catching fish, it's the possibility that I could catch a fish.
Got it. Thank you, Shiv. And Dan, go ahead. You wanted to
yeah.
add
No,
something?
I almost equate it to. My wife asked me the same question, like, why do you like this? But I think it's I equate it to like a golf game. If I go out golfing and if I'm hitting horrible shots all the time, but I hit that one shot that's really good out of my 100 shots I took that day, then I could do this. So it's like fishing, and so you get that you won. Like I think what's important, it is if you went fishing 100 times and you never caught anything, I could see that not being very exciting. But I think maybe Sharif and I were maybe lucky as kids growing up and catching fish and knowing that feeling, what it's like when, what's on the other end of it? You don't know when, I think it's a pike. Oh wait, it's a walleye. And then, this is really exciting. And that whole push and feel, and it's a battle. And then you bring it up and maybe you have a trophy fish, or maybe you have an eating fish, or maybe it's just a story to tell, whatever. Yeah, there is that excitement, I think, for me.
Got it. Thank you. We have a question from Umar. Umar, go ahead if you want. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah. Actually, Sharif and Dan have covered all the awesome benefits of fishing and the euphoria of catching the fish, right? That whole man against nature, I can feed my family thing. But the one thing that I've really enjoyed, like most of the time when I do go fishing, it's with friends, or family or whatever, right? And it's more of a social thing. But when you are fishing by yourself, and I've never done this in the wintertime, but fishing off a dock or fishing out of a canoe or something, especially during COVID with this whole mental health aspect, is there's something very nice about connecting with nature. It's quiet. You're with your thoughts. You're listening to the birds and the wind, and you're seeing wildlife. Sometimes if you're looking into the water, you can see crayfish and turtles. And anyway, I just think there's a very calming nature, like how some people really enjoy gardening and putting their hands in the earth and feeling the earth and planting things. Fishing is very similar to that. Obviously there's the sport aspect, and I think that's what Sharif and Dan are talking about, which I love as well. And that, wow, I caught a fish feeling is euphoric. But the thing I love about fishing the most is that connection with nature.
Yeah, good point.
Great, thank you. That is a Very good point indeed. Thank you for sharing that.
How do I unraise my hand now?
Oh, you can just go, or here I can do it for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key thing with ice fishing though is if you go with the to enjoy the experience. Like, don't go with, oh, I need to catch a fish, right? Because then you kind of lose the whole point of fishing, right? So, I mean, my advice, anyone new, because the problem is with new people, sometimes they go once, they don't catch any fish, and then they kind of lose interest in the sport, right? Because they were going thinking, I'm going to put my rod in the water, and within 5 minutes, if there's no fish, this is boring, and I want to do something else. But if you go with them, it's about like your mindset, right? If you go with the mindset, I'm going for the experience, I'm going to enjoy nature, as was mentioned, then the fish are just kind of an added bonus in that end. And then you'll really get into the sport, and you will eventually get fish. Like no one's unlucky to never catch a fish, right? if you do it enough, you eventually will get something, even by luck, right? But the key thing is just a mindset, and just go to have fun, right? And enjoy the experience.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sherry. That's a great point. And I was curious about one thing is you talked about luck, but there are, I think, certain things you can do to improve your odds of catching a fish. And here I have, I'm sharing a picture. Hopefully you can see of what looks like an electronic device in the water. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. This is a picture I shared. So first of all, the hole I did there, never ever do a hole that big. That is a disaster waiting to happen. Okay. So I'm just warning people that do as I say, not as I do. The reason I did this hole was I accidentally dropped my auger through the ice. And then I had to make a big hole to be able to fish it out again. So I got a big magnet from Princess Auto, and I actually got the auger back, thank God. But normally I would never do a hole that big because it is a bit dangerous. And the key thing, if you ever make a hole that big, before you leave, mark it. Like, get a lot of sticks and branches, just so there's no kid walking who falls in it, right, or something like that, right? Okay. In answer to your question, that's a fish finder. So it's called, this is the Striker 4 from Garmin. It's their lower end model. It's about $200. So it's obviously still a bit of an investment. But the nice thing about it is that, like a lot of times when you're fishing, you don't know, is it I'm in an area where there's no fish, or it's just there is fish, but they're not biting. And there's a big distinction, right? Because if you're in an area where there's no fish, then maybe half an hour later, you'll pick up and you'll move to another area, see if there's fish there. Whereas if you're in an area where there's fish, but they're not biting, you could try maybe a different lure. You could try a different presentation. You could try changing baits. So you can kind of experiment a bit to try to get the fish to bite. And that's where a fish finder really helps, is like, I can move my lure and I can see on the fish finder, is something chasing it or not? As I move the lure up, is something coming after it, up after it? And if I see that, then that kind of helps me it almost becomes like a video game where I'm trying to, there's a mark for my lure, mark for the fish, and I'm trying to play with the lure in such a way to get that bite. So it really, for me, it enhances the experience and makes it easier to find and catch fish. But again, for a beginner, it's not, it's more of like one of those extras that you can get once you're really into the sport. It's not something that's required for a beginner who's just starting out, basically.
Got it. Now I know what that is. Thank you very much. Wow, high-tech toys for ice fishing.
I do have a question on that hole.
Sure.
That's big enough. Were you doing laps back and forth in that giant swimming pool you had?
So it was funny. I had a friend with me, and basically after I dropped my auger, he started taking off his clothes, and he said, "Don't worry, I'll dive in the water and I'll get it for you." And I told him, "Don't be an idiot." It wasn't like, young people, they're not aware of the dangers of stuff like that. So definitely never dive in a hole to retrieve anything. Just we got a magnet and we fished it out. But yeah, like there are some people actually do the holes like that for something called sight fishing. So if the water's clear, you can sight fish. Or some people do spearing through the ice. Like there's some places where they allow you to actually spear the fish. Especially for pike and so on, but that's a very specialized type of fishing, not something that most people do.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That was a good explanation of why we have such a big hole. Because you're right, you do not want to be falling into a hole. It's not a good idea. Not a good idea. Okay, so here, what I want to, as we're coming close to the end here. we talked about how if you're a beginner, it's not a good idea to go alone. It's always good to go with someone who's experienced. So I'm hoping, Dan, you could tell us about this ice contest that you hold every year, and that you have some event coming up, right? This long weekend.
Yes. So normally, okay, so this weekend, first of all, is well, I think they do it 4 times a year. The Ontario Ministry that regulates hunting and fishing has allowed that anyone can fish this weekend, the 13th to the 15th, without a license. Normally, when you go fishing, and probably something we could have mentioned or should have mentioned, is that normally you need a fishing license or anybody over 18 has to have a fishing license. And then after 60 or 65, you don't, or I'm not sure about that. Yes, and they're not too expensive. If you're a resident of Ontario and you're getting an Ontario license, it's not too bad. But anyways, if you just want to try it out, this weekend is a great weekend to try it. You don't need a license. So I typically, for the last 5 years, I've been hosting the Harbor Harvest at the Nepean Sailing Club, which is a sort of your entry-level ice fishing tournament. Entry-level because you could go without any equipment, and we have all the volunteers there to show you how to do it. All the setups, the drills, the bait, if you want a lure or if you want to use live bait. It's an easy way to try ice fishing. So because of COVID, we weren't doing it this year, but what I am doing and partnering with Mackenzie Home Team Realty, who's one of our sponsors of the event, is still offering a $300 cash prize, because normally he does this. Jamie McKenzie normally does this for the winners of the tournament. He's still offering this cash prize. You just need to submit your photo of yourself fishing this weekend. So on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, you have to mention, if you check out dropinsports.ca Facebook page, it tells you what you need to mention in your Facebook post. But there's going to be a random draw. So you don't need to be even catch a fish. Just go out and show yourself enjoying ice fishing that weekend. And there's going to be a random draw for $300 with the people that are going to enter. And I'm not expecting a whole lot of people entering this contest, so the chances are pretty good. And it's just really to get people out on the winter to promote that, or out on the ice and to promote that. Oh yeah, there we go. So this is the Drop in Sports page. There's the prize. So I mean, without promoting it, I'm still planning to go out on to the Nepean Sailing Club this weekend, Saturday morning, maybe around 9:00, to drill holes, to have some equipment. But I'm not promoting it as, hey, come out and we're hosting an event. But I am saying that if people on this call are interested in going out, there's a likelihood that I'll be there to help you. I'm just avoiding any kind of event in this sensitive time. But I still, no matter what, there will be social distancing, and we'll keep it simple. It is a very accessible place. So right in the Nepean Sailing Club, you could park right there, walk right on the ice, and you're good to go. The ice in the harbor there is very thick. That's why every year I have my event there. And also I think it's a hidden gem, because people think, oh, it's where they keep the boats all the time in the summer. But I think we've caught some monster pike in there. If you were to look at some of the photos in the that we have in our Facebook page, you can see there's some big pike that were caught there too. So yeah, if people wanted to try it out this weekend, I guess I will have some equipment there and holes drilled. So that could be sort of checked off your bucket list.
No, that's great, Dan. So you said from what time to what time?
Well, that's I'll be there at 9 a.m. I do have to be somewhere at 1 o'clock that day, so I won't be there past 1 o'clock. Okay. And then the next day is Valentine's Day, so I got to make sure I'm happy and keeping the wife happy on that day. But I still plan. I still hope to go out on the next morning as well. But I'm not guaranteeing that. So all that to say, oh, and I would recommend, and I'm also trying to promote some of our past sponsors because I know it's a time that they're all having a rough time. So Ralph and Sons is a local restaurant that usually is a sponsor for this is the Harbor Harvest event. So usually is a sponsor for the event. So this year I'm not asking for any sponsorship. Rather, I'm trying to get people to go out and have a breakfast or a lunch at Ralph and Sons, which is just it's a 3-minute walk away from the Nepean Sailing Club. And the connected gas station has worms people could buy, so you could get some worms. If you don't want to go through the trouble of getting minnows, worms are another good solution. But I will again have some equipment with some lures. But I recommend breakfast and worms, and then come visit us at the Nepean Sailing Club.
Okay, that's great. That sounds like a great activity to do on the weekend. And, regarding the licensing, there's a question here about, are the rules different if you're on native territory?
Well, we are on unceded Algonquin territory, but if you're on native territory, there are different rules if you are Indigenous. But if you are going, I guess, outside of Ottawa, I guess the question is asking that if they're going to on a reserve or
potentially, yes. I think
So maybe the short answer to that is there is the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources puts out a fishing guide, and in that guide it sort of separates Ontario in different zones, and different zones have different regulations, and you should read those regulations because it actually does vary from lake to lake what the rules are. So yes, the rules will vary from, like, even the Ottawa River. Be careful if you're going to go in on the Ottawa River and come out on the Quebec side, because the Quebec side has different rules than our Ontario side of the river. So if you're coming from Ontario and leaving on the Quebec side with minnows in your bucket, you might be in trouble. Or if you have fish on you and you don't have a Quebec fishing license, you're going to be in trouble. So yes, you got to know where you're going. It's not too difficult. That's why this fishing tournament or the fishing event that we do at the Nepean Sailing Club this weekend is very simple, because you don't need licenses. You're just going to come in on the Ontario side, fish with us, leave on the Ontario side. You're not crossing the river to go to the Quebec side. So it is fairly simple, straightforward that way. But yeah, be careful of the other regulations around.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan. With that, we'll just close this off, and I would like to ask yourself or Sharif to give us any final closing comments before we end tonight.
You want to go ahead, Sharif?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, don't have to overthink it too much. Just go have fun, enjoy. Hopefully we didn't scare you too much from ice fishing. And yeah, any activity, any sport has risks associated with it. When you get in your car, you're taking risks. Just have to take the right precautions and know the right safety. And don't be. I know COVID is really keeping everyone isolated, but hopefully once the lockdown lifts, anyone who's interested in going, you're welcome to reach out to me, and we can do a socially distanced outing together. I do believe it'll be allowed outside up to 25 people, I think, once if we go back into the orange category. So take advantage of that. Winter still has a few weeks left, so try it if you can.
Great. Thank you, Sharif, very much for that offer. I may very well take you upon that, and I think others might as well. And go ahead, Dan. How about yourself?
A couple things that just came to mind, actually. One is being respectful out there. I've seen some bad behavior from other fishermen in terms of not treating the fish properly. If you catch a fish, respect it. If you're not going to be keeping to eat it, put it back safely. Try to make sure that everything lives. Keep your area clean. What you go there, leave with. I've seen other places where beer cans or stuff are left on the ice, and that's horrible. So just think, when the ice melts, all this is going into the water. So yeah, I guess be respectful when you're out there. The other thing is that wear waterproof boots. I don't think of it as a fashion show when you go out on ice fish. Invest in some nice, good waterproof boots, and then you'll have a much more enjoyable experience out there. And those hand warmers as well are extremely helpful to keep in your mitts or whatnot. Avoid getting your mitts wet so you don't have soaking wet mitts as well. So maybe bring an extra pair. So yeah, those are the two things that came to mind. And yeah, really get out there and try it out. And if you, I'm also up for if anybody wants to go fishing too. Sometimes I'm begging people to go out with me, but I'm also fine for going out on my own. But I agree with Sharif. It's good to go with somebody. But for sure, I'm open to go out and fish. Maybe Sharif and you and I should go fishing sometime too.
Yeah, would love to.
Great. Thank you, Dan. And that is truly a good, important point, a reminder about respecting the fish. In our faith, we are asked to respect each and all of the creation of God. So, and to leave, the area that we visit in the same or as better condition than what it was before. So thank you for reminding us to respecting our environment, our surroundings, the fish and everything involved in this whole activity, and to do it respectfully. And thank you very much for both of you for offering to help the newbies and newcomers to get introduced to the sport in a safe manner. And finally, I would just want to encourage everyone who has never tried ice fishing to at least go out there and try it with someone experienced like Dan and Sharif. And you never know, you may just end up loving it. And I just want to remind everyone what Sharif said. It's not about catching the fish. It's not about there and catching the fish because you will be disappointed. It's about there enjoying the great outdoors, the fresh air, right? We've been cooped up here for an extended period of time, and it's really going to help with your mental health, with your overall physical health, right? To be out there in the sunshine. You don't need to go and invest in these fancy things until and unless you're serious about it. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're going with these experienced fishermen, I'm sure they will not mind sharing their equipment with you. So thank you again, everyone.
There is one comment I'll just sure. I see it here. Someone's and probably something that should be mentioned is someone's asking about shacks and if they're provided. So shacks are like a luxury. You don't need shacks. And actually, I sometimes have gone out with my portable shack and let it sit in in my sled and not use it because hey, the weather's nice. I don't really need it. It's the sun's out. There's no wind. It's beautiful. So actually, most of the times you don't need a shack. So and a lot of people they just go out. They'll bring a little chair with you. And they'll just sit out in the open as long as it's not too windy or too cold. You're gonna be fine. You don't need a shack. So, but if everybody is interested in renting a shack, you could check out Peachtree Island. I know they're not actually actively renting shacks as we speak, but they have that service where you can rent a whole cabin there for the day. You could even rent overnight cabins because people will sleep overnight as well on these things as well. So yeah, I think that answers that question, I think.
Great. Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt. No, it's good. I think that was the last question. So thank you again. I would like to thank Dan for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and experience. And thank you, Sharif, for coming on this session and sharing your experience and advice and help in introducing us to the sport of ice fishing. I want to wish you both all the best. May God bless you both, you and your families. Stay safe. And inshallah, God willing, I hope to join one or both of you on an ice fishing expedition.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you. Great session. Thank you.